Hello, this is Paul Missal speaking to you. I'm here at Blackfish Gallery in February 2013. This is the show I'm sharing in this space with Steve Tilden, another colleague of mine here at the gallery. And we're looking at my painting here, The Gift, with this beautiful raven who is a resident of our Audubon Society here in Portland. His name is Aristophanes, and he's a real character, and I hope in the show that I have captured some of that character in the works that I did, some of the works that I did of him. This piece is an acrylic, and I've gone back to something that I used to do in the past where still life occupied a lot of the work I had done. The cup and saucer, fruit, silverware, tablecloths, drapery were very strong parts of my work back in the 70s and 80s. And then for a while I got away from that and did more figurative things. And I found myself sort of getting back to this. I had something about the image of the bird just kept coming up to me, and I just thought that there was something I really needed to integrate into my work, and with that, the still life seemed a natural coming together point. Aristophanes here, in one of my meetings with that bird up there at the Audubon Society, had this particular pose where he hunched himself back into his rib cage a little. And one of the things I found so fascinating is how he could totally change his looks by what he did with his head or his body. He's quite a character, this bird. Anyway, he had this particular pose, and I thought about it, and I thought, well, I'm going to give Aristophanes something to hold in his beak, because in fact, that's one of the things he would do when I would go up there to visit him. If he was in the cage, he would take something from inside the cage, and at one time it was a leaf, and he would stick it through the cage at me and shove it through, and then I wasn't supposed to, but I did. I went down, picked it up, and shoved it back at him. Well, he had a lot of fun with that and a lot of delight, and he would pick it up and shove it back at me again, and we did this back and forth thing several times. Anyway, I thought, well, with this still life, I thought, oh, how fun this would be, interesting to have Aristophanes bring a little bit of something to the table. And the table, as you can see here, is waiting. It's really in waiting for something to happen. That's why I call it the gift, that Aristophanes is bringing in this gift. Now, who's the gift for? It's for you, it's for the viewer. And if you look at the still life, it's like you're looking at this cup and the spoon, the lemon, and you'll notice that there is an emptiness there. It's a kind of emptiness. It's like not everybody has quite arrived. And that was part of what I wanted. I wanted the table to be open, the table to be a receptacle and ready for the viewer, ready for you to come and lay your impressions, your thoughts at the table. You know, I was talking about the cup and talking to one of the viewers here during the show a few days ago, and I said, you know, I had a lot of fun with this cup because I thought about filling it with coffee, putting something in here, or tea, and of course with the lemon tea it'd be more appropriate naturally, but I was thinking of putting something there, and I thought, well, no, because I think there is something to be said for the idea that the cup is really empty, like the table is empty, and the spoon is empty. And the person I was talking to, the fellow, says, well, it's clear there's nothing in there because nobody squeezed the lemon yet. The lemon is absolutely just as fresh as could be. I never thought of that. It just never occurred to me. I just looked at it as a shape and a color and something that belonged in the set, but I never took it to that step that if the logic of if there had been tea in here, this lemon would have been squeezed, and I would have seen quite a different lemon. So I thought, boy, isn't that interesting how this we pick up little things from the people that look at our work. They do carry impressions here, and if left open enough, they're happy to give their ideas to you. But more technically, though, something that I was interested in with these objects was I've always enjoyed the textures of surfaces, from cloth to the surface of the lemon, and you can see if you look closely the texture of the lemon surface, and then and of course the reflective properties of the spoon. And I really took advantage of that, the reflective characteristics, and invented color to put in here. So those colors don't really, I'd be hard pressed to say, someone were to come up to me and say, well, where'd you get that purple? Where did that come from? There's no purple here reflecting into that. I'd have to admit and say, well, no, I didn't plan anything like that, but I just thought the color would look nice. And that was a sufficient reason for me to do it, I thought. And besides that, in a way, there is sort of a flesh-like suggestion that maybe that's the reflection of a hand. I don't know. But anyway, I found that having a metallic surface there really gave me the opportunity to play with color a little bit more, reflective properties. Much like, in another way, there's reflective properties happening up in here too. The kinds of things you see happening at the on the claws of Aristophanes as he grips that table, or and then of course the reflective properties of this, or up in here too, what we see happening in the cup, or even the reflection here of the lemon in the saucer. So I had a lot of fun working with this thing in this painting, and working with the concept of reflections, of surface characteristics, and even the coming back to things that I really enjoyed doing in the past. I think in doing things like this, like still life, if I want to use them, if I want to do this and use this as part of my expression, there's a reason for that. Why do I need to come and figure out what that reason is? Why don't you tell me what that reason is, and you tell me what you think all of that's about and why I put it in. And I think you then become part of the artist. You become part of the experience of viewing this painting and being a participant in its creation, because it's really created in you. It's created in your mind and through your eyes, through the process of your own learning and experience, just like that gentleman that came in and talked about the fact that this was a fresh lemon that hadn't been squeezed. So that kind of thing I think I really enjoy. It used to be, I think, maybe it wasn't too long ago where I thought I had to really psych all the work out. I really had to figure everything out. Now, while I do feel that's important, I don't think it's critical. I do think it's critical to react to the stimulus. If there is something nudging you to do, and if something says I need to be expressed, then it's your responsibility as an artist to express it, to do it. And then you let it go, and you let your viewers, the other participants, experience that creation, come in and help complete that image for you. So there's a great freedom in that, and I think that's a freedom that doesn't come when you're, let's say, beginning let's see, as an artist anyway, as a painter, as you're beginning. I think it happens after a while. You really develop, and I feel I have, you develop a vocabulary in your technique, your technical abilities. You develop all of that. I've done my reading, I've done my research, I continue to do that. I continue to learn about paint and about painting and about illusion. And now it's just time to freely express that. There's a great opportunity there. There's a great opportunity there to open the door and allow expression to flow in and flow through me and onto the canvas. Maybe devoid, in some way, devoid of academia. Academia, I finished with that. And now it's time to be with it, not separate from it. So anyway, and have fun. Having fun is a big part of creativity, because I believe when I'm painting and I'm working on Aristophanes here, and I'm petting his feathers here, and working with, I feel I'm giving myself the license to live another 15 minutes, or maybe a half hour, or maybe another week. You know, you relax a little bit, and the things aren't precious anymore, but in the sense that they aren't, by precious, I mean I don't obsess about things so much, I just allow the expression to take over. And I feel that kind of freedom actually gives me a little more time on this earth. I've given myself a little bit more license to create, to live, free of that kind of stress that our daily experience seems to be so full of. So anyway, I had a great deal of fun with this bird, and with Aristophanes, I like to kind of tease him because he nipped at me one time, a little rascal. And I can do that here with him without fear of retribution. But he's such a great bird. I hope people that see this get a chance to see a raven close up, because it's quite an experience. Anyway, so technically though, by the way, I should mention that this is a fairly thinly painted. It's not a heavily painted canvas like a lot of my earlier things are. But if you look towards the bottom here, you'll see that some of this underneath here, these passages, are really the initial underpainting of the kind of grisaille method that I used in executing this painting. Grisaille is when you put your color on top of a monochromatic underpainting. So this is basically, you can see right through here to the underpainting, and then the thin layers of white were laced on top here to create the nuances of the drapery. By the way, I did have this all set up in my studio. Not the verticourse, but these things were all set up. So I did do this from observation. But then I laid on a thin white, and in this case, most of the white was done with zinc, which is a more transparent white. The zinc white is a beautiful color to work when you want to see through the color and yet allow the white to influence the color that's underneath. And that's what I think gives it a kind of airiness. And maybe in one sense the whole aspect of this passage becomes very airy because of the use of the zinc white as opposed to the titanium white, which is more the white you see up here in the clouds. It's a more opaque and a whiter white. Something that's its opacity actually gives a little bit more form to the energy of the clouds. But as you come down here, and as I say, and also I should say there's some more titanium white in the top here, but all down in here, and then these areas, the shadows, it's zinc white. And so I had a lot of fun with playing with the different whites and also the different blues. If you were to look at this and see on top of the black and white painting that was underneath here in the washes, I layered the whole thing with blue, with a wash of, let's see, this was a manganese blue that I ran across the whole thing. And then into that I used ultramarine and also phthalo to influence the manganese, the initial manganese wash. And then in little areas you'll see strokes of purple that give it a sort of an iridescent quality, also providing the opportunity for exercising a bit of the complementary, because the purples act as a perfect foil. The complements, they charge each other. So purple in the presence of yellow becomes more purple. The same thing with looking at yellow, when your eye picks up some of the purples, there are some in here and here too, and up in here, they emphasize the yellowness of the object down below. So that's what the use of that kind of technical thing is about. But I think it's such fun. I'm really delighted seeing how these things interact and influence one another. The rose was something that I used in another painting, and I saved the leaves and then sort of invented that posture for the leaves of the rose to fit into Aristophanes' beak. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with this painting. I enjoy the surface of it. I enjoy the humor of it. And yet at the same time, I also think there are other levels of meaning that the painting can have for the viewer that brings an open eye and an open mind to the piece. This is one of my favorite drawings. I'm really pleased with how this drawing came out. If you see, Aristophanes is very present here in this environment. He's bringing in a young woman who has been encased in a leaf, and the leaf is aged, and it's been essentially her cocoon. And you can see the leaf with its tears and its tatters. It's quite an old leaf, and she has pushed the leaf aside and is emerging out and is stepping on the new leaf in the fresh water and to continue her journey and continue her growth. So that's in essence what this is about. It's the raven takes on the persona here of the wisdom and the bringing forth of the new age. And so he's bringing forth this, and still in his beak, this leaf. And I think in the fall, when you see all the leaves curled up, one of the things that gave me this impetus to create this image was in seeing how the leaves curl up. And I saw that, I just had the sense of it. Yeah, that's like a cocoon. And it seemed to say, I've been wanting to do something with the concept of transition, and particularly focusing on woman and transition from one kind of persona into another. We all move through, we all make our transition from one time to another, one period of growth, and grow into another time for us. And that's what I wanted to represent in this particular woman moving forward to her next incarnation, I guess you could say. But I thought this represented it so beautifully, the raven with his crown up there and looking out there in a way, very proudly bringing this event forward. I had a lot of fun with this drawing, and I totally enjoyed doing it. This drawing and the other drawings in the show were done and very late at night. I did these things, all my drawings, in the evening, usually starting about midnight. And I would take my drawing board to bed with me, and I would have my cup of tea set off to the side, an herbal tea, and the drawing and the concept that I wanted to do. I would lightly sketch on, and then I just propped it up in the bed, just sat down in the back of the bed with my tea there, my drawing materials here, and this board up here, and I just slowly start building on the drawing. And I usually would work till about 3 in the morning. It seemed like such a meditative way to work. And I would do this at the end of a day of teaching or even a day of painting on the other works that you see here. That it was just a wonderful way to unwind and settle down. Drawing is very meditative. And it's an activity that we get into. It's not just about the thinking, it's not just about an easy device to set out ideas. It is that, but it's also a way of working, and it's very personal, and it's very meditative and soothing, I think. To me it was, anyhow. And of course it often did put me to sleep, and I would catch myself with a line going a little bit too long and I would nod off a little bit and have to catch myself and erase it and go back in, but that's how relaxed I got. And so I really needed the drawing in a sense too. But the idea, to get back to that, I really wanted to have a drawing that would carry this message and carry it effectively. I don't feel that this drawing would be any better translated into painting. I feel it's a very complete statement just as it is. It has a lot of color in it, a great deal of color. And the color is expressed in the way the characteristics of the marks are accumulated here in the bark, or the way the marks are done for the water, or the way they're done for the ferns, or the way they're done for the flesh or the feathers. Everything has a different kind of mark, a different kind of cadence. And it requires a different kind of concentration. And being with the mark making, and being with its sound. This is a 3-ply Strathmore Bristol surface, and has a little bit of tooth to it. So the mark making has a sound to it that also is part of the whole experiencing of it. When I go to lay down the tones for the flesh, I use a harder pencil, an HB or 2H, and I'll very delicately go back here and use my stroking to build up these very delicate soft grays that you also see in the leaf, particularly in the lower leaf. But when I go up to work inside of here, or even back in here, although it's done very light, that's a heavier pencil, an HB, and sometimes I will use an ebony pencil very lightly, and it gives it a kind of a chalky black. I didn't want a deep, rich black, but I wanted a tactile, a black that's on the surface that had a tactility to it, that did have a kind of surface agitation. And I think that agitation happens not only within the characteristic of each individual stroke, but along each passage. And you'll see in here also that there is a flow happening in the drawing. The flow in this drawing happens like from here, goes down to here, and then over to here. And it's enhanced by some of the shapes you see around here. For example, here. A coincidence of this edge and this edge, or this edge and this edge. You see that kind of passage, and this, which is reflected in this. So you have even this as a shape opening up to give you this as a shape. So there's these, and then this. All of these passages and shapes that are formed inside this drawing give it a kind of rhythm and also a flow. If you think about it, I like to think about paintings and drawings as having a flow of activity, almost like water, like a waterfall, but in this case a waterfall of gestures, thematic gestures, and then sometimes it's a waterfall of darks, sometimes a waterfall of lights, but all of them having coincidentally, I don't know what the right word for that is, but all of them together forming a kind of vertical passage that moves from here down to here. So that when you look at this drawing, your first attention goes to Aristophanes here, our raven, right here almost in the dead center of the composition. And then from here, your eye just wants to flow all the way down to the bottom, and then you kind of rise up through the branches, and then you begin your flow back down again. The textures in here, I was also very, very conscious of how I laid down not only the textures with my medium, that is the ebony pencil and the HB pencil on that surface, and the light delicate touches, or sometimes a little firmer, but also the textures implied by the foliage, what this foliage is, what this is like, or what the texture of the older leaf is compared to the younger leaf that is still sort of freshly fallen, but has fallen into the water to be carried off. But the textures of the surfaces in there versus this kind of texture, which is very coarse and kind of chunky and slower in movement. So that the textures of the surfaces on the surface and the surfaces of these surfaces. So that is the textures of feathers, the textures of leaves, the textures of the plants down here that are moving up to support this image. So the painting, the drawing as a whole has an overall color about it that usually we think of color like we did in that other painting, or the painting where we're looking at blues and yellows. Well, here we're looking at feathers and bark and leaves, or we're looking at coarse to very fine textures, to very evenly applied patterns in the back, and suggested patterns in the back. So there's all kinds of color in the drawing. So it's got a lot, I think, to offer the viewer when you come up to it. And from a distance, I think the bird brings you in, and then when you get to a viewing distance, I think those questions start unfolding. What is that bird holding in his beak? What is he doing? What is she doing? Oh my gosh, look, there's another leaf down. All these questions start tumbling about in the viewer's mind, I hope. Anyway, that's pretty much what my concept was in doing the piece. And by the way, I think it's interesting that most of this work was done by observation, through observation, and also some photographically. Like I did take pictures of the bird and worked from some small photographs. I had little snapshots. And then other things like this, and some of these forms were done from being on the site, and this. Some of these are done by being on the site in Portland, and in this case here in Wilsonville. This came from a pond near where I live. This came from shrubs and branches in front of the Audubon Society, and that's where this guy lives, at the Audubon Society. The leaves came up from a little community near me, Lake Oswego. I would find these leaves and take them home and hold on to them and say, I know these are the ones I want to use. I hired a model. My lovely model here, Serena, was a model that I've used frequently at the college where I teach. She's a professional model there. So everything is sort of collaged and come in a way brought together to make this statement. So I found that a really interesting process. Here I'm using observation, but it's observation in all these different ways and pulling all these resources together to make the one piece.